You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
All right, it's the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals Network. Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms, as well as subscribe to the website, CanesCounty.com. I'm joined today by Connor O'Neill, who runs the Wake Forest site for Rivals. He's kind enough to join me today. Of course, we are embarking upon the ACC tournament for the Miami Hurricanes, but the Demon Deacons already got off to a great start, and they advance and will play the Hurricanes this afternoon. Connor, thank you for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me a reason to roll out of bed here and get the day started, because it's going to be an early day for me.
Yeah, definitely. So yesterday it was a thrilling ending to the game against Syracuse, and congratulations, you basically retired Jim Boeheim. You guys retired a legend with a thrilling ending. Just your thoughts on the game and the Demon Deacons performance against the Orange.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say there was at least a little joy in the fact that a coach who at all twists and turns has just seemed to be begrudgingly not even accepting. Like, he's begrudged a lot of ACC traditions, and one of the main offenses is there's no value in playing in Greensboro. And if you cover the league at all, like, you know that Greensboro is the heart of the ACC tournament. Like, this is where all of the history is. And
yeah,
man, I get that there's not much going on in Greensboro outside of like basketball hours. Like, if we get to Friday and I think you're in town, right?
Yeah.
If Miami wins this game and you've got all day Friday to kill, I'll be honest with you, there's not much for you to do around Greensboro. And that's, last year up in Brooklyn. Wow, that was a bad voice crack there. Last year up in Brooklyn on that Friday, I explored the city. I went to the Brooklyn Zoo. There's a whole lot you can entertain yourself with in a full day in New York before covering basketball games. There's not that in Greensboro, but man, it was pretty karmic, especially with Syracuse got a 9-point win against Wake last weekend. It was the first meeting of the teams, which was kind of wild. They played 19 ACC games before playing each other. That wasn't even the only ACC matchup like that last weekend. So it was weird to have them. They were locked into the game before last weekend's game.
Yeah.
So, as far as the game goes, Wake did some different things. It was more so just Wake doing some of the same things, but doing them better, having a little better handle on the ball, not throwing too many passes that were easy interceptions that turned into fast breaks for Syracuse. And that was a huge theme, especially in the first half in their game last weekend. So then there were still a couple of those yesterday, and it's one thing to give Syracuse a fast break. Judah Mintz and Joe Girard are good when they get out on the break. Miami is, so much better. When you have guys like Isaiah Wong and Jordan Miller, Nigel Pack, when those guys are able to get out on a fast break, you might as well just put 2 points on the scoreboard, it feels like.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Wake
it was an amazing shot by at the end there, man. I saw the highlight and it brought back flashbacks for me of Miami against Florida State when that last second shot kind of went through the hoop at the Wasco Center. So I guess where I think Miami might have an advantage here is that it was an emotional win. If they just blew the doors off of the Orange, I think actually Wake would probably have a better chance because they'd probably already be thinking, okay, we're not done yet. But this was an emotional win, so I think having that type of win, I think is an advantage for the Hurricanes here.
Yeah, I'm with that. The only caveat is I've covered these tournaments before where a team gets hot and kind of turns one of those buzzer beaters into, they're already at full speed when the next game tips off, and when the other team hasn't played at all this week, like Miami, that can lead to some big run for the team that is the underdog team in this case, coming out of the gate. Like they're kind of already revved up, like their engines are full go. Miami, granted, Miami's also coming off an emotional win in their last game. Like that's a big win to win the ACC regular season, but it was 5 days ago now. So there it goes both ways in my mind, is just the way I've seen it play out, where Wake will be riding some momentum. They'll be spent a little bit, but sometimes that little, you're able to carry over that burst of energy to the next day, and it can really propel you forward at the start of the game. And I say that, and Miami might jump out on them 18-2 today, and this looks terrible, but that's the way it's going to play out sometimes.
It's funny that you say that, because I think that's what the key will be for Miami. Miami needs to come out and start out fast, and they need to, act like, their hair is on fire and just really get after it in those first couple of minutes and really kind of demoralize the Demon Deacons. I think if you let this team hang around, you could be in a situation where you'll have some nervous possessions, because obviously it's a win or go home scenario, and those final minutes, if it's close and it gets tight, that's where Wake will have I think will have an advantage, because I think they're going to have a nice crowd. They're obviously they're probably they are the closest university to Greensboro.
Yep.
So the fans came out last night or yesterday afternoon. So I think it's going to be even more today. So that's where Miami really has to show that they've matured this year as far as the late game scenarios, because Miami has been in situations where they've thrived in these situations, and then other times they've just kind of pulled away just with their offensive prowess, so to speak. So it'll be interesting if this is a close game late. How have Wake really fared in those close game scenarios besides yesterday?
Well, they've got now 13 losses, and I believe 6 of them are by 2 points. I say that, and granted, like 3 of them had a 3-pointer made as time was winding off the clock, and like the teams had stopped fouling, and it was just like all right, we're going to get one up before the buzzer type situation. It wasn't, there weren't last plays that defined those games, but it was, it's an easy thing to point at, where you're like, you're 19-13 this year. Wake Forest is not even in a position of, say, a Pitt, NC State, or Carolina, where they need to win a couple and hope that they get in the NCAA tournament. Wake needs to win the ACC tournament to be in the NCAAs.
Yeah. And
you start going down the list of regrets, and it's like, well, if they had 15 more points in their pocket and just spread them out throughout some games, they're on like a 5 seed line.
Right.
It's that close. The margin of error has been that slim. I do think I wrote what you're talking about though last night for the kind of small preview of this game. Like I do think if Wake somehow gets this game close within the last 2 or 3 minutes, they've got the clutch guards. They've got what they need to win March basketball games that come down to the wire. Like Tyree Appleby has kind of been that guy all year. He's a clutch player. Davian Williamson, you saw hit the shot yesterday. Cameron Hildreth. I mean, that's Davian Williamson's shot is the one you're always going to remember. But the Cam Hildreth shot to tie the game at 74, where he jump stops into the lane and spins and hits an 8-footer. That's a crazy shot. That's a shot that had Steve Forbes cussing in the post game presser. Calling it some English poop, I guess. but yeah, I'm with you. I think if it comes down to, I'm not even saying Wake would have an advantage in a late game situation. I just think Wake has a puncher's chance. When you're a 9 seed in a conference tournament going up against a 1 seed, team that beat you by 9 in the regular season, it's kind of all you can ask for.
Yeah. Miami, I think, just outscores teams at times, and I think that game against Wake during the season was just one of those scenarios. I think opponents go into a game against Miami hoping they can just get hot from 3 and hope to outscore them. And I think based on it being a back-to-back scenario for Wake, I think it's going to be tough for them to do that against Miami. The other thing that Miami, I think, has an advantage is the fact that they are still somehow under the radar. It's really odd that a 1 seed would be kind of under the radar. I mean, I've looked at other projections of who's going to win this tournament, and some of them don't have Miami winning despite being the number 1 seed and I believe beating I don't think there's a team that they faced in the ACC that they haven't beat. So I think that is in the back of their mind. I think they have something to prove, and it's weird that a 1 seed has something to prove here, but for them to be on the 5 line and be a 1 seed in the ACC tournament, if their jersey was the Carolina blue or the Duke blue, I think they would be maybe a 4 or 3 seed. I think there's a bias, for Miami, and I think that's maybe with all sports, but certainly with basketball, there's some kind of bias towards the Hurricanes or any other team probably in the ACC that's not Carolina or Duke. So I think that's going to be the one thing for them, because obviously they don't need this game to get into the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of want to see them get off of that 5 line, because a 12 always beats a 5, right? So I just kind of want them off of that 5 line. I think that they deserve to be a number 4 seed, and I think that thought is in their back of their mind going into this tournament.
Yeah, there's probably some Wake Forest PTSD here of wanting to get off the 5 line, because I think one of Wake's best seasons, they were a 4 seed and lost to Cleveland State. Gosh, if I'm remembering correctly, it might have been Chris Paul's freshman year. No, not his freshman year. They were a 4 seed and got to the Sweet 16. It's going to take me too long to go back and research it, but I do know that I'm pretty sure they were a 4 seed one year and lost to a 13. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I kind of went through this last year with Wake Forest when they had the season they did. and they were kind of undervalued, underrated. And I talked to a lot of people about if Wake Forest, it wasn't necessarily the whole if Wake Forest was wearing Carolina blue or Duke blue, would they be there? It was more of if Wake Forest hadn't been picked, 13th or 14th in the ACC, would they be like it? The thing that drives me crazy is preseason projections. We hold on to them, and that's not like Miami would have been picked in the top 5, top 6 of the league by just about everybody filling out a preseason poll. So that doesn't necessarily apply to them here. But I think you're right. I think if this is a different situation, if they're one of the blue bloods of the ACC, it might be a situation where they're talked about as a top 3 or 4 seed. I also think, man, the perception of this league is so down. And I was telling people yesterday, we were having kind of the seed conversation, and they couldn't believe that Duke, Duke is the hottest team in the ACC. I did the research. Duke is tied for the second longest winning streak entering conference tournaments of any Power 6 team. It's 6 wins in a row, and they're on the 7 seed line. And it's like, whatever you think the national perception of the ACC is, take it down a couple notches, and that's where it actually is. Like we know the perception of this league is bad right now, and I still don't think the people in the league have a full grasp of the way others outside of the league, people that cover the SEC, people covered nationally, God, they think the ACC is terrible. Sometimes it's hard to disagree with that. Like it is an oversaturated league. The teams that played on Tuesday here, like, man, some of those teams probably should have been relegated at the end of November so that they weren't in the ACC this season.
Agreed.
But man, that's the kind of heartbreaking thing. Like, I get really excited to see the ACC in Greensboro, and then it's like, oh man, these are the teams that we got. Like this is the level of play here. It cuts both ways, and it cuts deep.
Yeah, definitely. I think going into this tournament, we kind of knew what teams were not going to win. I think we knew that Louisville wasn't going anywhere. Boston College, Notre Dame, these teams, Florida State. We knew they didn't really have the cojones to really kind of go the distance in this tournament. But I think now, I think any team has a shot here. NC State is on fire. Duke, as you mentioned, is one of the hottest teams. Carolina, I don't believe it at all, but it seems to for some reason are a legitimate shot at winning this tournament. But let's talk matchups really quickly here, or star players that you think need to have a good game for their teams to win. I'll start out. For me, I think it's Jordan Miller and Norchad Omier have been your constants for the Hurricanes all year. You're going to get double-digit points from both of those guys. You're likely going to get double-digit rebounds from Omier, but it's really the other guys that have been kind of up and down for the Canes. Wong, I think, is probably the guy who has he has the highest ceiling, the ACC Player of the Year, obviously. But at times he gets ice cold, and by the way, it's frigid cold out here for a Miami guy. I'm just like, oh my god, I'm glad I brought my biggest jacket that I have, or coat, I would say. It's that big. I have to refer to it as a coat. But yeah, so sometimes he gets cold, and So I think whatever you get from Wong is what you get from Wong, and we've kind of lived with that. But it's really two other guys for me that are key. Logan Poplar, who exploded last week against Pitt, and it's Nigel Pack, who's been on a tear for this past month. So I think if those guys have big games, this game is over. This game could be a blowout. But if they don't, if they're quiet and you get your standard from Miller and O'Meara, and you're kind of hoping what you get from Wong, then you're in some kind of dangerous territory if you're a Hurricanes fan. So those are the key players for me. What say you about Wake?
Yeah, Wake got really good games out of Ty Appleby, 15 points, 12 assists yesterday. David Williamson obviously hit the shot. He played a great game, especially he's had a really down year. That's part of what made the last second shot such a easy storyline to write. He's a fifth-year guy who has just not had the type of farewell season that you would have liked to see out of him. Cam Hildreth had a big game. He had 15 points, and 9 of them came in the last 6 minutes. So he really got going late. He was the guy that kind of, as they were jockeying back and forth there and coming down the wire, he was the guy that Wake was going to for offense down the stretch. And Bobby Klintman, I've been joking around like Bobby is a freshman from Sweden. He played 1 year in the U.S. and played at Sunrise Christian last year, which is he was playing behind Mark Mitchell and Grady Dick. And those are 2 McDonald's All-Americans. Mark Mitchell, I'm not sure if he's going to be back yet or not for Duke. If he wants to go, he's probably going to be drafted. And then Grady Dick might be the first American player off the board. I guess after Brandon Miller goes or whatever that situation plays out as. But Bobby Klintman is kind of been a project. Like, he's really raw, but he had 17 and 11 yesterday. He had, I think, 3 threes. He really kept Wake afloat when Syracuse was up 12 in the first half. He had a little scoring burst there that kept got the game back to pretty close. So of those 4, like they need similar performances from all 4 of those guys. I really watching remotely when these teams played about 2.5 weeks ago. Like, Wake didn't have enough firepower to keep up with Miami offensively, and that was when they had a healthy Damari Monsanto on the court drilling. I think he had 4 threes in that game, and he's out. And that's the part where I look at, and if you want to be a glass half empty guy, I mean, Wake was 9 points worse than this team when they had a 40% 3-point shooter who's been their best player at times this year. So without him, I really think you've got to get a virtuoso performance from Ty Appleby. It'd be interesting to see if there's any kind of, evening the score with the player of the year voting. I'm not saying that it should have gone to Ty Appleby. I'm kind of glad I didn't have to make that decision, as I didn't have a vote. But when you have a vote as close as it was, I think it was 30 for Wong and 23 votes for Ty Appleby. Like, that can juice you up a little bit. That can push you forward if it's something you pay attention to. Ty is pretty laid back and easy going, but he's kind of a laid back killer in that regard. I think Isaiah is kind of the same thing, as I've watched him in the ACC for 4 years. So it'd be interesting to see those two if they go head to head at any time today. That'd be pretty fun to watch.
That would be fun to watch. I think that's what we're both hoping for. In that matchup. I love watching both of those guys all season. They've been outstanding. All right, so Miami is a 5-point favorite, 5.5. I think last I checked, which I think is about right. I think Miami wins this game, by 2 possessions or more, just based on back-to-back for Wake. The injury to the player who shot 40% in the last game, and the difference for me though is that this is basically at Wake Forest, so there's that difference. So I think that kind of evens things out from the last game, which was of course in Miami. So I think Miami pulls this one out. I think it gets close in the end, but I think Miami gets the rebounds from Norchad Omier to close this one out late. And Miami's one of the better free throw shooting teams in the entire country. So I think they make the free throws to close this game out in Greensboro.
Yeah, you want me to give a prediction? Because
yeah, just kind of your assessment of how you think this game will turn out.
Yeah, I think I don't think Wake has the stamina and the firepower to keep up for 40 minutes. I do think that Wake can storm out of the gates early with the lead. Maybe pump some nervous energy into the building a little bit for Miami, but they're also Miami is an older team than Wake is, really. It's not a game that I see coming down to the wire. I think Miami pulls away between end of first half, beginning of second half, when fresh legs start to kind of really take over games. I always think of that time. So I think that's where Miami pulls away. I would take Miami and give the 5.5 points. That's just me.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's such a tough task for Wake today.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we'll see how it turns out, and who knows? We may be talking again tomorrow morning, as Connor O'Neill also covers the Duke Blue Devils as well. So we'll see how everything turns out there. Thanks for joining me this morning, Connor. I know it's early, but should be a good one, and we'll see each other later.
Sounds good. I made it through. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for joining me.
No problem.